Great.
Good.
Hi, Ernie.
Hi.
Hi, Ernie. I'm Ernie.
What
we
was
got
this part
everybody?
of political? Go on.
Oh, right. Yell out when you're going to record, Jack, because I just said I would.
Oh, it's all right. I can record and then edit. So you're okay. It's on.
Okay, we'll hit record now, because what I wanted to do was to formally introduce Professor Ernie Stringer.
Yeah.
Beaming in from Dublin to the Network of Educational Action Researchers in Ireland, or NEARI, and welcome you to the conversation. And Ernie has kindly agreed that we can record the conversation and share the link with interested parties. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Right.
That's great.
So we've had a busy day in Dublin, and Ernie and his partner Rosalie, who's sitting modestly in the background despite being a very good researcher herself, she's not coming. I can't lure her in. One of the things that I thought I might ask to kick the conversation off is there's an aspect of Ernie's research that I've always been interested in, and that is his use of, you know how action research usually goes plan, act, observe, reflect. Ernie has a model called Look, Think and Act. And I thought I would ask him if he would just explain about that model and why he uses it.
Great.
Over to you.
You're sending me back into my history.
Yeah.
Okay. That was actually, I worked with for some years with a person who was very strong in community development. And his way of framing any activity was through what he called trialectics. It had to be 3 parts, simplify it to 3 parts. And so out of that, in fact, became the 3 parts of look, think, act. But always you start with a process of defining the issue in which you want to look, think and act. So there's in fact a bit of a pre-work to be done before you look, think and act. So the look, think and act actually is, look is gathering data, and it should be look and listen.
Yeah.
Think is analysing the data, and act is what emerges, what you do. You can write a report on the basis of the analysis, or you can define action on the basis of the analysis. So that's, in a nutshell, what look, think, act is about. The Research Act has a trialectic.
And you've used that extensively in quite a variety of different cultures. Would you like to talk a little bit about the cultures that you've done your action research in?
Well, that actually emerged from my work with Aboriginal people, where you need to have something that's very simple to deal with the very difficult cross-cultural issues that emerge. So I've used that in Aboriginal context, where we're trying to define the situation in terms that make sense both to, particularly in fact, to the Aboriginal people who are usually the centre of, or were the centre of the research that we were doing, their issues, their problems in their own terms, and then making sense of it in terms that I could understand or my co-workers could understand, and do that as a collaborative process. So that's as my action research emerged in that context, and then I've taken it across and used that in different parts of America, Hispanic, African American communities, in East Timor, Singapore, possibly others.
Well, yeah. Can you all still see me here in Cork?
Yeah. We
Yes.
can. Maybe.
Yep.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
can't. I can only see you one at a time, because Maureen rang me and I answered the call, and now I've lost all the pictures that I had in front of me. So I think Maureen is trying to get in touch with us all.
Yeah.
So I hung up on Maureen, but now all I can see is Pip and Ernie here, and unless somebody else comes in, I can't see them. So don't know what.
Right.
what's
Yeah.
there.
Right, because you're all on this at the moment, and as long as Pip stays closer to Ernie, with all 5 of us are all, that's it. It's really good.
I love Pip.
Excellent. No, that's really good. Excellent.
I was trying to take myself off the screen while Ernie was talking, because
Yeah.
I think he's the one that we've assembled to learn from. So I was just trying to minimise my own presence there.
Well, I need to minimise my presence because I'd like to understand more about what's happening for you guys.
Mm.
Well, I'll hand over to Bernie and Mary, who've been paddling this solitary canoe here in Ireland for such a long time. And perhaps, Mairin's coming in.
Yeah.
Perhaps you would like to talk about the work that you've been doing and why it's so important to try and let other people here in Ireland know about action research.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Mairin.
Hi.
Lovely to see you.
How's everybody?
Very well, thank you.
Good.
Pip, could you repeat that so that Maureen can hear it as well?
Yeah.
And yes,
Ernie's done a little bit of a spiel, which you can watch in the replay, Mairin, about his look, think, act approach to action research and some of his cross-cultural, multicultural stuff. And he just asked if he could find out about what we're doing here. So I'd suggested that you folk who've been paddling your solitary canoe for such a long time could talk about the work that you do and why it's important for other people in Ireland to know about action research here. So over to you, Indigenous Irish people.
okay, Bernie, we go alphabetically. B for Bernie.
Oh, thanks, Mary.
No pressure,
Bert. Well, as Pip said, we have set up this group, Network of Educational Action Research in Ireland, because Maureen and Mary and myself, with Katrina, the fourth member of our group, we have been kind of trying to promote action research in Ireland, not terribly successfully, for a number of years now, ever since we ourselves became interested in it. Because I think we got really hooked on it, and we see it as a way of life, not just a means of doing research, but as a way of life for us. And it's not easy. You would think it should be easy. I mean, Ireland isn't a big place, but maybe that's what the drawback is, that there aren't enough people interested in that kind of research. So we've been trying various things. We kind of got involved with the Teaching Council of Ireland, thought that would be the way to promote it, but we had a certain amount of success there, but it wasn't sustainable. And just on that issue, that's why I read recently, Ernie, your ideas on sustainability, because we're actually writing a book, the four of us at the moment, on Introduction to Critical Thinking for Educators, and that was my role in it, to write about the sustainability of action research. So I'm very interested in that idea and how we can sustain it. So I'm kind of suggesting that communities, learning communities, might be a way of doing that. And I think NEARI is in a way a learning community, and it's a way maybe of promoting our action research. So so far we've had 3 meetings of our NEARI group. The first one was probably the most successful because it was a novel idea and people were drawn to it. We haven't had as many in the second or the third, but at least there is still a nucleus there, I think, that we can build on and then move forward with it.
Yeah.
Does anybody else want to come in and add a bit, Mary or Maureen, to that?
Yeah, I suppose
go on.
I'm going to jump in and say that I'm still working, even though I've retired from the primary school, I'm now working in a third level context with trainee teachers, young student teachers. So they are now doing action research. In their year 3, they begin what would be called, I suppose, a lit review anywhere else. But they have identified an area of concern based on their 2 previous school placement experiences. And then they identify a concern or something they'd like to develop further in their either their understanding of it or their practice of it. And so we suggest that they might read around that, or entitling it a lit review. The title is "How Do I Deepen My Understanding of the Theory and the Literatures Around this concern, whatever it may be." And they're very varied. Some people assume that student teachers are going to be all bothered about classroom management, but in fact, they've been researching differentiation and all sorts of different things. And slightly to digress, just at the last NEARI meeting, one of my first cohort of students presented, and on foot of that presentation, I now have him coming back to talk for 2 hours to our fourth year students. He's going to do a workshop with them on how he's living his educational values in his practice, which was really exciting for him and for us as well. So in year 4, they take that theoretical base and try and put structure on it and say, how do I improve my teaching of or in relation to or whatever, and they try that out in their classrooms. And they I suppose they fear it and maybe they resent it. They feel it's an imposition sometimes on a very busy 5 weeks. But to a man and a woman, they all say afterwards, it's been the biggest learning I've had in my 4 years and the most beneficial reflection that I've done, and the most real and authentic reflection. So, so that's part of what, where we're coming from with NEARI is I can see the potential at undergraduate level as well for this kind of work. Maureen, you wanted to come in with something.
I was just going to say that I suppose also I'm a teacher, but I also work a little bit with some of the colleges supervising people doing masters in action research. So I'm kind of coming from the theory and the practice side of things, and I'm sometimes very conflicted. But I suppose for me the whole idea behind NEARI was, I suppose, my own initial enthusiasm for action research. I found it not only life enhancing but life changing. With how I engaged in my own practice. And I suppose for me and Mary and Bernie and Katrina and Pip now as well, we just want to kind of share that joy, that enthusiasm, that excitement, that magic that is kind of, I think, an inherent part of action research. It's not just all cut and dried, lit reviews and looking for data. It is actually nearly a spiritual experience, I think. So that's one of the things that that's egging me on to kind of, to try out this whole network idea. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, just one other thing that I wanted to say. We're also working. Some of us, at various stages, have been working with second level maths teachers. Well, sorry, they're teaching maths in secondary school. They don't have maths in their degree, so the teaching council has decided now they must do a postgrad in the teaching of maths. And we were asked to provide workshops for them in how to do an action research project and then supervise that. So we've done 2 years now. We're doing it for the 3rd time. And at times we were kind of despairing and saying, gosh, do we really want to do this? Because they just didn't seem to get what action research was. They were using very much a positive approach, and in spite of all our help, in spite of the workshops we have given them and all the online help and so on, we thought, well, are we really getting through to them at all? So we have started on our third group. This is our 3rd year, and I got a proposal from one of the teachers yesterday, and I have to say I was pleasantly surprised. It really made my day, because his research question was about how he could improve his own teaching of maths, and I thought, great. And when I read a little bit further down, he had identified his values, his educational values, and I thought, well, that makes it all worthwhile. If even one person gets it, can see what this is about, it's worth all the hassle.
Yeah. I suppose NEARI, one thing I'd say, there are lots of people doing.
You gone, Mary?
Yeah, Mary, I'm not hearing you.
No, I think you're gone, Mary.
Yeah, she may come back.
She may come back, yeah.
Yeah, I think she may be coming back.
Rematerializing.
Oh, actually, yeah. No, she's gone yellow on mine, which means that there's a... Mary, are you there? No. And also Mairin's gone as well.
Is Mairin gone? Oh.
I'm here. No, I hear you.
There,
that's
You may
good.
not see me, but I can hear everything that's going on.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, because Mary's gone on to... Oh, that's a real pity.
Gone offline, yeah. Do you want to say something, Jack, while we're waiting for her?
I mean, I suppose my research is focused on in the here and now as I look at us, and you're all on the screen, and I'm fascinated by the nature of the relationships which actually help us to sustain our own inquiries, but we're now doing it, as you are saying, in community. And I'm actually delighted that Ernie's here, because I'll be able to put this onto YouTube, and then we'll be able to communicate, for example, with the Action Learning Action Research Association in Pretoria on the 7th of November, where we've got a workshop there, Sonia Hutchinson and Pip. We'll be able to bring this in as what we call a living poster. At Trinity in Dublin, you've got David Coughlin, who in 2014 produced the encyclopedia with Mary Bryden Miller of action research. Now, that costs £180, so it's way beyond most people's budget. But it's a fantastic text about the encyclopedia of action research. Now, there's also, with Hilary Bradbury, who is now with Action Research Plus, created a superb site with Sage. And again, it's this feeling that we're in a position now to communicate globally. We're acting locally, but we're now connecting globally. And to have Ernie here, with all the work that Ernie's done internationally, but also focused in the local community within the Aboriginal context, like with Alice Springs, it just helps to highlight the importance of the quality of relationships, but also that sense that we are acting locally, we're living our values as fully as we can, accounting for ourselves and sharing it, but also connecting globally. And your Irish context, this is why I'm looking forward to coming over in January, again, to do what I can to say, why Bernie's, honestly, the passion Bernie showed in her doctorate in relation to social justice. I thought Mairin was amazing with her use of technology. We've got Katrina, who isn't here at the moment. Mary, are you still there?
Mary's
No.
trying to get in again.
Is she?
Just probably trying to get through, I think, yeah.
Well, look, I'll hang her up. Wait a minute. Let me just remove from group and I'll try and get her in again. Hang on, let's just see. Okay. Now, can I get Mairin in? So add. Well, let me just see if I can add Mairin. There we go. Okay, we're trying again. So that's why I'm really excited about what it is we're all doing. I just think it's part of now a global movement which is now gathering strength. And the different action research networks, like the Action Research Africa Network, Kathleen Pitthouse Morgan posted today a lovely text that she's got out with the self-study group. The Action Research Network of the Americas, very successful in Toronto in May. And I think we're gradually learning how to connect us all. So we're actually sharing, from our local context, but feeling connected in this global way. Yeah.
Could you try and bring Mary back in again, Jack?
I just did. Is she there?
No, that was Mairin.
Maureen.
Who'd you say?
That was Mairin.
Mary Roche. We need Mary Roche back in.
Yeah, no, I got Mary's internet has just died, so I'm not sure I'm going to be able to reach. She just texted me there, so.
Right.
The joys of technology.
Oh, yeah. No. Mary's is not live.
Okay.
It's a shame. If it comes up, I'll bring. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so facilitating those global connections has been a very important part of your recent work, Jack, hasn't it?
It has. That's why I'm fascinated about bringing what we're now doing in those relationships. And Pip, with the, helping to support the Irish group, who've been working now. I mean, it's over 10 years, well over 10 years. And I think that in January, I'll be able to hopefully support the work by getting in touch with David Coughlin at Trinity, Mary Bryden in the States, and doing what I can, like, bringing Ernie now into the YouTube context so we can actually see what each other is doing. Yeah,
I think there's kind of a sense of that everybody is, doing their own little thing in their own little place, and maybe struggling a little bit, like we 4 or 5 are finding, and so it's really empowering. For us to have the opportunity to kind of, just reconnect with others outside of our own little niche, and to realize, that there's a bigger, wider world out there.
And in additional to that, I think, Mairin, is the fact that there are people like Ernie and like Jack who are out there in the wider global community who actually care about what's going on for us in NEARI and are keen to support it. I think that's tremendously encouraging.
Oh yeah, and energizing. It really is, absolutely. So thank you, guys.
So if I can come in here now and perhaps now that I'm getting a little bit of an understanding of the context, make some comments about what you're saying and link, in fact, some of the comments. First of all, my approach to action research is always a participatory approach. So I'm going into the experience of your students in my mind and thinking, as they're doing their work, are they doing their action research projects as individual projects, or do you have them linked in learning circles or something like that, so that they're constantly able to exchange information, ideas and feelings about the projects they're doing? So that's sort of a question, really. You don't need to answer that immediately, but that's something that I've used a lot, is to have interactions between the students through learning circles that I help them set up. The other aspect of that is that as my students become engaged in this, and as they start to feel the power of the processes that they use, that I basically link them also with the stuff that I'm doing, so that if I'm going to conferences, I'm likely to be talking to projects of my students, and if it's possible, then I take some of my students along. And they participate in my work in the broader arena, and become really enriched in doing so. The other, going in the other direction, I want to ask whether the students themselves are engaging with the other primary stakeholders in the projects, and that is their own students. And are they integrating their own students into their inquiries and their explorations? That, I think, is a very fruitful field. And other stakeholders, teachers who are, whose classes they may, may be working in. So again, what I'm looking for is to broaden the circle. Always in my research, I'm looking to the circle to make the experiences participatory and enrich them as they go through. I'm really impressed, I might say, with what I'm hearing from you about what the students are getting from their projects. If they're getting those sorts of insights and feelings about what they're learning through those projects that you have engaged them, then you're obviously doing very, very good work. So that's just some thoughts that I've had as I've listened to you.
I missed a lot of that. My internet just died, and the benefits of living in the country down here in the deep south. In terms of how they engaged in my group, how they're engaging with other stakeholders, as you call them, they are involving, my student teachers are involving their cooperating teachers, their supervisor from the college, and their students as critical friends.
Yeah,
with it, they're including all of them, and they're getting permission from all of them, of course, in advance to be able to record conversations in manually or digitally or whatever. They're not allowed to photograph or video because of child protection issues, but they're getting around that, and really involving, and mostly with good success. There have been a few schools that are a bit suspicious, can't seem to grasp that the student is doing research on their own practice and feel that they're being researched or scrutinized in some way. But by and large, I think, and Bernie is one of our supervisors, by and large, they do come around. It's been more successful than I expected.
Sounds wonderful.
I think they get bitten by the bug, actually. They come into it, some of them, with a suspicion that this isn't real research now, because we're not using that passive academic voice. And You know, there are not lots and lots of pie charts and histograms and things and crunching of numbers, but they come out of it at the other end almost completely convinced that there is no other kind of research, that if you're involving people, this is the most ethical way of researching one's own practice with other people. So that's good.
Mary, while you were offline, there was a question that Ernie asked about whether you facilitate learning circles among your students who are doing the action research projects as a way of helping them to stay. You might want to rephrase the question, Ernie.
Rephrase it?
Repeat it, yeah.
No, I never allow my students to work in isolation. I always insist, in fact, that they form learning circles of some sort.
Yeah, I do. Sorry.
Yeah, so just that. I found it very productive. The other part of what I was talking about was I've not always been able to do this, but in places where I have been able to do it, to take at least some of my students to my academic conferences and workshops, and for them to participate in those. I found that very, very productive, both personally and for other participants, to have the students bringing in their perspectives on things and giving presentations with me.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm conscious that in one of your interviews, Jack, one of the interviews from the Norway series, you talk about that some sort of a performance is necessary to kind of up the ante and up the performance is probably the word, but that they do lift themselves up when they are presenting. And yeah, I agree with you, Ernie. I've brought students along to research and to conferences, and they presented their work, and they just completely bowled the audience over. You know, they were so authentic. Their voice was so authentic. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious, I suppose, about something I don't really understand how to do, and I think it's the social media as we're using at the moment.
oh yeah.
How we can, for example, bring ourselves into events like the Action Research Network for the Americas in Toronto. I managed to get multi-screen Skypes as Pip notes and living posters. And this is exciting me, like in response to Ernie, where we get our students to present with us, but also how to bring our voices now in the quality of the dialogues that we're having into these other spaces, so that, if you like, through this sense of living boundaries, we're feeling connected. You know, so as well as our students presenting with us, it's this. I'll think about this, and then when I've posted this on YouTube, perhaps we could develop this issue, because with Pip in Pretoria, with the Action Learning Action Research Association, with Sonny Hutchinson, with a workshop, it should be possible for us to bring this, you know, even a brief clip from this with Ernie, you know, into that space. Okay.
So this issue has been with me, Jack, for some years. I don't think you were in Groningen, were you?
Yes, I was, yeah.
You was, okay. So we had meetings there about how can we link all of the various action research associations together so that we form some sort of stronger federation or collaboration. Bud Hall has had the same issue. And what it does is send me back to one of my early learnings about action research, which in the day when I was practicing as community development, I went to my mentor and said, where do I start? And he said to me, you start where the people are hurting. And just to translate that a little, it's got to have some purpose. We've got to have a purpose in collaborating, and we have to get something out of the process. And Doug's, the person I talk about, Doug's wisdom there says, well, it's no good just having an association unless it can provide something that enables the people to deal with a hurt, if you like. So we need to figure out more clearly, I think, what it is that we can accomplish which will ease the pain that we're feeling from isolation or lack of resources or whatever it is that are the hurts that provide the purpose for doing this.
And that, I really do understand. Okay, so I've got so many people who do begin with that sense of hurt.
Yeah.
Now, my problem is that I don't. My problem is, it is, honestly, it's like the joy and the pleasure that I'm feeling at this moment, because I've got, if you like, that sense of that history of the 5 living theory things, PhDs, that, when you look at what you did at Limerick. Now, this is what I want to communicate to others, Ernie. I want, and I know what you're meaning about, you start with the hurt. And I've got a lot of researchers that are doing with living theory of care, starting with carers networks. But for myself, I know that it's actually that energy and the passion, like with Bernie, like that social justice. Anyway, I'll just mention that, Ernie, because I know what you're meaning.
No, I'm not suggesting we start from a point of negativity, Jack.
Okay.
But there's got to be a strong purpose in doing that collaboration that actually feeds us.
Okay, No, I'm agreeing with you. It's just that my purpose is looking at what you've done.
I think it goes back to our values, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's what we value and what we're striving to live out in our lives.
Yeah.
We value the importance and the strength of action research, and we feel we're not maybe living it out fully enough in our lives as it is. And that's why we want to Skype with Jack and Ernie and Pip and so on, because we're trying to strengthen that sense of purpose with action research, maybe.
Yeah.
So the purpose that we feel is one thing, but the purpose of our students and the purpose of our students and what it does for them is the way we link from the local to the global. And, those purposes have to be conjoint, if you like.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Ernie and I were just having a conversation yesterday about the fact that some of us who've been involved in action research for quite a while aren't getting any younger. And what we do to bring on the next generation of action researchers. And I think, like Mary, your students and the people that Bernie's supervising, and at our last NEARI event, it was seeing those young people come forward and speak their truth.
Yeah.
It was just joy-inducing, really.
Yeah.
I think I said them, I can pop my clogs one of these days and I'll know there's some other people coming on after me who understand the importance of action research.
Yeah.
In the UK, there's been this amazing, basically revolution with the election of Jeremy Corbyn as a left-wing leader of the Labour Party. And over 160,000 people have joined, and largely young people. And it's actually tapped into an amazing upsurge of values of people that have been actually ignored. And, it's this that I think that, as you say, with the young people, that we're now offering that kind of, I hope anyway, those values with that energy.
Yeah. And you see, what I like about it when I'm presenting it is it doesn't feel like a lecture or a normal, here's the theory, off you go now and try and put it into practice. They seem to recognize there's truth here, that there's an authenticity and a real sense of me doing something for me at a practice level that will have a beneficial outcome for the students in front of me. And I suppose to go back to what Ernie was saying there, all we can do is really take charge of that bit of what we do. So if our students see us actively researching and actively trying to improve what we're doing, and we need to keep maybe modeling that and saying that, because we could be beavering away in the background and they mightn't know. But if we keep on modeling that, all we can do is take charge of that bit of our own stuff and hope that will influence them and that they in turn will influence others, and keep that momentum going that way, because we can't really take any responsibility for what they do. We just provide the stuff for them, the opportunities.
Yeah, but you've got the addition of making that public. So this is what's so vital, I think, about what you've done. You've researched that practice with those values and energy. And it's that I'm really committed to spreading the influence elements
Yeah.
of those understandings. Yeah.
Yeah. I met a man, I was at the Literacy Association of Ireland conference at the weekend, and I met a man there who said, "Oh, are you one?" Now, Bernie and Maureen, plug your ears because you're going to get annoyed. But he said, "Are you one of those women from Thurles who wrote that book?" And before I could put him right and say, "Well, I'm just one of the women and I'm the one in Thurles." But anyway, he said, because I kept saying to all my colleagues in the college, look at what's come out of Thurles. Pip, you're going to have to explain to Ernie later on. Thurles is a very small town in Ireland, and I happen to work there. I live in Cork. Maureen is on the west coast, and Bernie and Katrina are on the east coast in Dublin, and we co-wrote the book together. But just the word Thurles jumped out of this.
It'd be a bit like somebody saying to Ernie, "Can anything good come out of Warburton?" Which is where he did a lot of his early work.
Yeah, but anyway, he's impressed that book came out of Thurles. I would say that book came out of UL, or Limerick, as Jack referred to it there, because that's where it all began, really. I mean, we felt our way through the process. And I have huge empathy for people who are trying to get on the inside of these ideas on foot of 2 or 3 workshops. Because personally speaking, I think I was into my 4th year when, I was still grasping and grappling with the idea of living educational theory, and that I was researching me and not the children and not dialogue or whatever. I had to keep on pulling myself back into that. So I think our students are marvellous that they get it, particularly those ones on the maths course.
I'm just going to get a little book that Ernie's shared with me. Can I show them?
Sure, absolutely.
The breakfast book.
Actually, Ernie, I was looking, and I won't pull it up here. I was looking at some theses because there was an award at the Literacy Association of Ireland, but one of the theses referred and had your model, your particular graphic.
Wow.
And I actually asked the question, I think, Bernie, didn't I? Said, "Have any of you heard of this Stringer fellow?" That's not that long ago. Not just your.
And what did I say, Mary?
You
Mary,
said great friend of Pip's. Yes, you did.
No,
Yeah.
Maureen said that. I said, yes, I have quoted him in my chapter.
You did. Dead on. You did. Yes, you did. Yeah.
Just like to make a comment about, that people keep talking about, my work with Aboriginal people, but what that has done for me basically is to provide me with a set of practices and understandings that I'm able to apply in a whole range of contexts. That in the US, I've worked with African American and Hispanic groups, very mainstream groups. I've worked in East Timor, using the processes that I use in that I've learned in these Aboriginal contexts has been incredibly successful for me in a whole range of other contexts. So it's not just about exotic Aboriginal people, it's about what I learn about myself, my practices, what I understand, and how I work with other people, especially people who are somewhat different from me.
Do you want to talk about these books?
No, you talk about them.
But this book here is a lovely story of work that Ernie has done on your own. Not on your own, obviously, but in conjunction with Aboriginal communities about building a breakfast club for the children. And the story is their story. You guys would love it. I'll have to show it to you next time. And it's pictures of the kids coming from home to school and getting to school and with their parents making the materials for breakfast and then sharing the breakfast together. And it finishes off at the end of the book. Breakfast gives the kids lots of energy.
Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful.
To learn and play.
Yeah.
And so it's research at the most powerful level, I think, showing how a community has worked together for the good of the whole community to support the kids in their learning by providing basic nutrients on the school property. Do you want to add to that?
Just that I assisted the women to, that was their idea actually, in conjunction with speaking with the principal about how they could help at the school, the idea of a breakfast for the kids before school. Now, what this did, and the women understood this, was bring the kids to school, because school started before a large part of the community was awake. So the kids would hang around home waiting for their families to wake before they went to school. Sometimes they were so late that they didn't bother to go to school. When the school breakfast started, they all went to school because they knew they were going to be fed and have a good breakfast before school started. So there was an immediate impact there. But then the people who were doing that weren't any of the teachers or the administrative staff, but their mums and their aunts and their grandmas. And they clearly felt really happy about that. So it just changed the whole nature of the context. It was beautiful to see. As that time went by, the women themselves said, we need to be telling the story of this school breakfast program. Mm-hmm. So I sat with them. They were asked, in fact, to give a little presentation on a webinar. And I sat with them and said, what do you want to say about your school breakfast? So we looked at pictures. We took photographs of them giving the school breakfast, and they said what they wanted to say about each of the photographs. And I wrote it down, very simple words. That became the script that they read from for their webinar. I stood behind the camera with cue cards, and they read that. And that was eventually translated into this book, which I absolutely love. It's 5 years old now. They still sit there and read it. The other aspect that was that just in the last year, as a result of requests from them, we got funds to do a whole range of other stories about other work that they and other groups are engaged in. Do you want to take over from that? Mm-hmm. Well, we've got another book. So there were 24 books.
Wow.
Community life done by and with a number of community groups, which talks about community life, their work, some of the cultural stuff like digging for barty grubs and honey ants. But it's their work, and they just love the stories.
The other thing I really like about this one, you've heard me rant about the fact that Irish is not used extensively in Ireland, and it makes me sorry, but this is also written in both English and in the language of that particular Aboriginal nation. So you've got the story being told from two perspectives there.
So just to put it in Jack's terms, what they're doing is telling stories of their lived experience, the things that really are important to them in their own way, in their own language, because the stories are bilingually told in the books. Mm. So there's a whole range of ways in which it emerges as what I think of as an action research process.
Yes.
We sit with the women, they determine which groups they're going to approach. The groups themselves tell how they want the story told. The photographs are taken, they talk about the photographs. So it all comes out in their own terms. And we're facilitating this and providing some of the administrative and technical background to their ability to capture their own lived experience. And the joy they have in that is just palpable. Mm-hmm. When they and the kids sit around reading their stories, there is just such joy in their place. I always think of Jack. I see that happening. It's a beautiful thing.
I must say,
so this beauty of the lived experience we need to be able to capture. And if your students can capture that joy and vitality as they learn about their own stuff, then telling their story in a range of ways might be possible. It's a delight.
I feel a great affinity with your work, Ernie, and with Pip's, because as the others know probably, that my research was on an Indigenous Irish group, the traveller people of Ireland. And so I was very drawn to the Aborigine and the Maori people, and there would be a lot of similarities. When I was comparing the traveller people and their culture and their marginalisation within the community in Ireland. So certainly, I think that's probably another thing that draws us together. We have so much in common. I mean, social justice was such an important part of what I did, and I can see it coming out in your work as well. So that's, yeah.
I think when you were talking about the groups and facilitating, part of our work with the Teaching Council was that they weren't students. There was no sense of us and them or us in a power position in relation to somebody else. It was groups of teachers who came together of their own free will, who met once a month for 2.5 hours in an education centre. This was in my context in Cork, who helped each other solve problems in their practice. My role was just facilitating the group and, making sure nobody dominated or that everybody got a voice or whatever, or throwing the odd literature reference in or something, and then collating the stuff at the end. But they told their own stories, and that formed part of the research we did for the Teaching Council. And Bernie and Katrina did somewhat similar and very different work. And Mairin was absolutely key because she's way over there in the West, and the groups were too far flung geographically. Mairin wasn't it? But Mairin put the whole document together for the Teaching Council. So that's going to be the basis of our third book, or the book after the one we're on now. Yeah. But again, what was really exciting in that is to see, as Mairin said, the transformation and the ongoing realization that we all had that we were actually doing something, and we could call it action research, but we were actually just trying to live our teaching lives better. And to be able to formalize that and call it, because we were putting the structures in place of gathering data and mining that data to check for evidence and all. But as Mairin said, it went beyond that into something, which Mairin said the word spiritual, but that's actually, it was transformative and it was empowering for each of the people involved. And it was, for me, eye-opening that some of the quietest people in the group were such attentive and empathetic listeners that they were able to solve problems for other people or help other people to solve their own problems, whatever the dilemma was in teaching. It was really, really great.
I'm aware of the fact that we need to finish at 8 because Jack's got a PhD Skype. I'm wondering, Mairin, if you want to come in with anything, you've been fairly quiet.
No, it's just I realise I'm kind of off grid here and I have no light. But I just see this. I'm watching the sunset as I speak here. I'm just worried about. I'm worried about, but I suppose one of the things that drew me into the whole research thing was the idea that people can generate their own theory.
Yeah,
I love that idea. We're talking about kind of empowering and enabling fellow teachers and students of students, to have their voice. And I think that's something that drew me into the whole idea at the very beginning. I just love it. I think it's a very powerful way for people to be able to express their own voice and to become, I suppose, as they research their own practice.
I think that's one of the central things of the research that we do, when people can express their own understanding. You can say their own theories about what's happening and how it's happening. I think that's so central, so important to our action research. Wonderful insight.
Yeah, and that, as Mairin said, that power of feeling that you can theorize your practice, you can provide that description and the explanation around it and provide a rationale and locate it in so many different solid pillars of epistemology and ontological values, and that you're sure that what you're doing is something that's worthwhile for other people. First of all, at a personal level, and then at that level that you're not researching as, you're not researching other people, you're allowing them to research along with you. I think that's probably the most exciting part for me, that I'm not, because it took me so long to get there, to understand that. Yeah.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Breaking the idea that you're talking about subjects.
Yeah. Yeah. And particularly nowadays where, the first programs or modules to be cut tend to be the foundations, tend to be the philosophy, the history, the sociology, the psychology of education, all the areas that allow us the language with which to question and challenge the deprofessionalization or the deprofessionalism that's going on, and the technicization of teachers. And I'm really concerned about that I know I'm lucky to be in an institution that still has foundations, because I'm hearing from colleagues that they're the parts of faculty that are being cut back. And I think it's really important that, that critical pedagogy, and that we keep on reading each other's work and reading the work of Freire and Giroux and McLaren and Kincheloe and Bell Hooks and all those people that so excited us, Maxine Green, all those people that we keep in touch. I suppose that one of the things we forgot to say, we've started a little book corner, almost a Padlet, where we're putting down books that inspired us and impressed us, and putting that up there for others to add to it as well. It's part of our NEARI work.
Ernie, you were going to come in with something just before?
I was just going to say, before we close, I'd just like to say it's been so enjoyable for me to listen to your accounts of what you're doing here, and just delightful. I just thoroughly, it's nice to come to the other side of the world and just listen to people who've got so much insight as to what they're doing and how they're doing it, and to hear the outcomes that they're achieving. So it's sometimes a lonely road we lead, but the energy for me has always come from the people that I work with in front of me. And then, from that, in fact, has emerged over time my extension into eventually into the international arena. But I still get that energy from doing these little things, what seem to be little things, with people in my own localities. So students are your people, and I can hear the energy that you give to them. It's wonderful.
It's a bit like that old expression, act local, think global.
Global, yeah. And we're really grateful that, Jack's love of connection and connectivity, and Pip's huge ability for putting people in touch with people. We're really grateful that we've had this chance, because it has allowed us to get NEARI into the, out of the womb and into the labour, into the cot. It's still in the cot, but soon it'll be toddled.
Nice melody.
I'll send you the URL.
Like before.
Yeah, I'll send you the URL for the video, so it's there in the sense of the archive. Okay?
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Right.
Lovely to talk to you all. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks all for joining in. Lovely to talk to you.
That's great.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Hmm.